Hello dear students, so the topic that I have taken is Directive Principles of State Policy. So the first thing is that we need to understand the concept. Okay, so if we take the topic Directive Principles of State Policy, we will find, or we can divide it into two parts. One is Directive Principles, second is of State Policy. So if we analyze, we can find the meaning with the term itself. Okay, so we have Directive Principles. So what is it? This is kind of instructions or principles, then principle to whom of state policy, that is when the central government or the state government is forming any new law or policy, then there are certain principles that are instructed to be considered by the government before they come up with any new policy or law. And where are these principles? So these principles are written in part 4 of the Indian Constitution, and that is what we call Directive Principles of State Policy. Okay. Now the thing is, why are there certain instructions or directives being given to the government? So the answer is that the ultimate thing, or you can say the objective of the government is what? To achieve a welfare state. So these directives are like a guideline that the government should follow, so that the ultimate aim of achieving a welfare state is there that can be achieved. Alright. So on the basis of this short introduction, we can move on to the meaning. So now we can very easily derive the meaning of Directive Principles of State Policy. So as I said, part 4 of Indian Constitution, especially Article 36 to 51, it deals with the directive principles of our state policy. Okay. Now the provisions contained in this part, it cannot be enforced by any court. Okay. We can do a comparative study with the fundamental rights. So we have already studied that fundamental rights are justiciable. So if there is any kind of infringement of fundamental right, you can move to the court, right? But in case of directive principles of fundamental right, these are non-justiciable. Now you can ask the question, if not justiciable, then how is it implemented? Okay, so it is implemented. Why? Because as I said, these are guiding principles to achieve the ultimate aim. So therefore the government has to obey these principles, have to follow these guidelines. Alright. The concept of Directive Principles of State Policy, it was borrowed from the Irish Constitution, and the Irish Constitution, if we go back to the history, we will find that Irish Constitution has taken it from the Spanish Constitution. While most of the fundamental rights are negative obligations on the state, that is, that it's said that there is freedom of speech and expression. So the state can't interfere if there is freedom of speech and expression, freedom of religion. So the state can't interfere or can't make it obligatory on any person to follow any particular religion. So this is what we mean by negative obligation. Whereas when we talk about directive principles of state policy, these are positive obligations. That means the state is asked to do something, so therefore it is positive. Okay, and asked to do something, and it is positive obligations, though not enforceable in a court of law. Now now once we know the meaning of directive principles of state policy, we need to just analyze in brief the historical background. So from where this concept came? So as I told you, so the inspiration has been taken from the Irish Constitution, and the Irish Constitution has taken this from the Spanish Constitution. Okay. The makers of the Indian Constitution were very much influenced by the Irish nationalist movement and borrowed this concept of from the Irish Constitution in 1937. But in India, the Government of India Act also has some instruction related to the concept. Afterwards, when we had our Nehru report, so in Nehru report, it also contained, which contained the Swaraj Constitution of India, contained some of the fundamental rights and some other rights like right to education, which were not enforceable at that time. So that gives us a glimpse of this particular feature, that is directive principles, right? Okay, so then after that, there was this Sapru report of 1945. It divided fundamental rights into justiciable and non-justiciable rights. And then when the directive principles of state policy we talk about, so both the fundamental rights and DPSP were enlisted in all the three drafts, that is first draft, second draft and third draft of the constitution that was drafted by the drafting committee whose chairman was Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. And this is how we finally get our directive principles of state policy in part 4 of the Indian Constitution, Article 36 to Article 35. Now exactly what are these directives? So as I said, Article 36 to Article 51, so it talks about what? It talks about the directive principles of state policy. So we can enlist it very easily, but what I have done is or how generally we do study DPSP is we classify it into three categories. One is socialist principle, Gandhian principle, and the third one is liberalism ideology. So what is it all about? It means that as I already said, that the ultimate aim of DPSP is what? To achieve a welfare state. Okay, so this is achieved through once there is this motive of achieving socialist things. So there are certain directives that aim specifically or is related to socialist principle only. For example, we have Article 38, 39, 39A. So 39A, like for example, if you take, so 39A is what? It's equal justice and free legal aid. So when we talk about equal justice, so it is socialistic principle, and we are talking about free legal aid, so again socialistic principle. So likewise there are the other principles. Then we have Gandhian principles. So there are many directives that are very close to the ideology of Gandhism. Okay, so for example we have Article 40. So Article 40 is what? Organization of village panchayat. So we all know Gandhiji did emphasized on village panchayat and all. Alright, then what do we have? We have Article 43. 43 is living wage etc. for workers. So that is how we can relate it with Manrega, right? Then we have liberalism ideology. So there are these articles that is related with it. Now for example, you take Article 50. So what is Article 50 all about? Article 50 is about separation of judiciary from the executive. Article 51 is about promotion of international peace and security. If you go into detail, you will find it is more related with the liberalism philosophy. So likewise we have these directive principles of state policies, and each and every directive is particular and special in its own way, and the ultimate aim is what? The ultimate aim is achievement of welfare state. Okay, now the original directive principles of state policy that has underwent certain changes through amendment. Okay, important is the 42nd, 44th, 86th and 97th amendment. Now what the amendment did, it actually added certain new points, certain new directives to the entire principle concept. Okay, now for example, if you take the 42nd amendment, so 4 directives were added, that is Article 39, 39A, 43A, 48A, right? So these directives were added. Then you have the 44th amendment. So 44th amendment, that was in 1978. So added Article 38 clause 2, okay, which says that the state shall work to minimize the inequalities in income and endeavor to eliminate inequalities in status, opportunities, etc. Not only among individuals but also amongst all the groups of people residing in different areas or engaged in different fields. Then we have the 86th amendment. So 86th amendment changed the subject of Article 45 and brought it within the ambit of fundamental rights, mentioning in, that is being mentioned in part 3 as Article 21A. Okay, so 21A is what? It's about the education of children in the age group of 6 to 14. Then we have the 97th Amendment Act. So the 97th Amendment, it was in 2011, which inserted Article 43B, okay, in the list of directive principles of state policy. It says that the state shall endeavor to promote voluntary formation, autonomous functioning, democratic control and professional management of the cooperative societies. So likewise we have these amendments to the DPSP so that it is up to date with the present situation, with the changes in the political, social, economic status of the country. So now the question arises, do the states, whether central or state government, do actually follow the directive principles of state policy, because it is not enforceable. So the question may arise. So for that, I've just picked certain, you can say, examples, that important ones that prove that DPSP has been implemented. It had been implemented actually. For example, you all must be knowing about Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Program, that is MANREGA 2006. So what is this? Minimum wage should be provided to workers so that they have their daily bread and butter. So this is what related to Gandhi principle, and this is something related with the implementation of directive principles of state policy. Then we have national forest policy. So again, if you remember, so there is a directive that states that environment should also be protected. So this is something related with that. Then we have Article 21A, about which we have already studied, 86th Constitutional Amendment. Then there are several Land Reforms Act. Then we have Jawahar Rojgar Yojana 1989. So all these are actually examples to prove that yes, the state and the central government do follow the directive principles of state policy. They take it as a very serious thing. They take it very seriously, and they know that they have to implement it because it is very essential for the development of the nation as a whole. And so on this basis, we can just come to the conclusion that the concept behind directive principles of state policy is to create a welfare state. In other words, the motive behind the inclusion of DPSP is not establishing political democracy, rather it's about establishing social and economic democracy in the state. These are some basic principles or instructions or guidelines for the government while formulating laws, policies of the country and in executing them. Okay. Then, as Dr. B.R. Ambedkar has said, these principles are what? These are noble features of the Constitution. It acts as a guideline for the state and should be taken into consideration while coming up with some new policy or new law. But there is also one thing, that no one can compel the state to consider and follow it, but then also states do follow it despite the fact that it is not justice here. So with this, I hope that the concept is quite clear to you, and if you have any doubt, you can just send me any query. Thank you so much.